So first of all, who is Prosci? Very briefly, what makes us unique? We are their partner, affiliate partner in the Baltics and Finland area, but they have around 50 countries they are represented in. 80% of Fortune 100 companies work with, and it is the biggest global research on change management that we're bringing to you. So just a few years ago, we asked companies in Estonia, there were over 100 executives, how they assess how effective the changes are that they are working with in their organizations. All kinds of changes, process improvement, new strategy, digitalization. And here you find some puzzling numbers, I think. So according to these executives, only about 1 out of 4 projects were successful in their view, and only 1 out of 5 managed to stay on time and on budget. So we can say there is a hell of a lot of potential actually that is unused, or that we have very critical managers, another option. And then we also looked into the reasons why it happens that these projects fail and what are the root causes. And most of these causes actually had to do with managing people in the change. So the people side. We were also, we found out that actually about 80% of these organizations lacked any structure, any system, how they manage change. There was no common language, there was no framework in the use. So if you leave it completely for past experience or gut feeling, you do it based on intuition, these are the results you may get. So our argument always has been, in a time of increased change, having a structure, taking change as a process is really valuable. Another interesting fact here in the beginning, I don't know if you've seen this McKinsey survey, global survey in your context. They said that average digital transformation actually only stands a 45% chance of, or actually 45% of cases it delivers less profit than expected, and only in 10% of cases they exceed and get more profit, exceed the outcomes and goals. So that is another puzzling question to ask, why it happens. I'm coming just in a second to hear your explanations to this. What we have seen working with many organizations in change is that there are kind of 2 parallel processes that determine success. One of them you may call, it's a technical side of change. That's what the project management is all about. And that also solution design is all about, getting a very good new IT system, for example, developed, designed and delivered for a client. Or getting a digitalization strategy being developed and ready to launch. Yeah. So that must be in place, of course. Without that, nothing happens. But there is another process which we call the people side of change, without what no project, be it IT or any other change, can't deliver the impact, the business impact that you're so much after. And that is question of whether people embrace this new design, whether they adopt it, they want to use these processes, the new systems, and how effectively they do it. That is the question. And this people side is the focus of Prosci, of our methods that I will share with you today. And if you were to really say that changes ultimately, how they happen, they come to life through people getting on board. Be it a huge project with thousands of people, or just a smaller project, new system adopted by hundreds of people in a smaller organization. The issue is the same. Do we get people to adopt and behave in new ways? So imagine just visually two kind of scenarios. One of them is a ship that is Empty ship, basically where we ignore the people side of change. Another is that we call a scenario of a full ship, where we apply effective change management and we get people on board excited about it. In both cases, the ship is there, perfect solution, very well designed ship. But what makes them different is how, in one case, we have ship that is quiet, there is no action, no enthusiasm, no buy-in, and in another case, it's full of energy, it's running, and it's delivering the impact. And on this slide, you see basically the two kinds of stories or answers, responses you hear from the project managers about change, how they run the change, how they manage the change. So in the case of empty ship, it's kind of a thinking that we thought we could just tell people to do it. That we had such a good solution, and we were thinking they just jump on board. Or things were so bad before that it would be obvious that the new system will run. Also, what's common to this scenario here, that our executives, the sponsors, change owners, however you call them, they were visible and active in the beginning. Yeah, they signed, they gave resources, but then they kind of delegated it to the project manager, lower level, yeah. And we communicated project timelines, milestones, progress. That's kind of the story. In the full ship scenario, on the other hand, a compelling case was made. People were really focused on what's in it for them, what gets them going. Yeah, communicating, answering the questions they have, creating the desire, focusing, spending as much time on managing people through this transition. Just doesn't happen on its own. So I'm creating these two scenarios, and so often we see that, yes, almost every company says we would like to be on this right side, the full ship, of course, but so often we see that they fall back on the left side. And I will just in a second want to hear what's your experience and why it happens. Before it, one more kind of background slide. So we say there are 3 factors, people-related factors, that actually ultimately determine success, also in IT change. One of them is speed of adoption, which means how quickly people embrace the change, how quickly they come on board, how fast are they on the ship we want them to be. So that ultimately impacts how well the project stays on timeline, for example. Second one being ultimate utilization, so how many people actually come on the ship, on the board. Yeah, so that gives the power to the change. Will it be organization-wide, really big transformation, or just doing something on a pilot kind of thing? Yeah. And thirdly, proficiency, how well they operate. That has a huge impact on the business side. So do they actually only use a fraction of the intended systems and benefits, or do they really use the full potential there? So what I wanted to discuss with you just a second is why it happens, in your opinion, that in digitalization or IT projects, seldom, yeah, or quite often, this people side is not managed good enough. We see delays and we see resistance, all of these things. And what the research shows us globally with thousands of organizations here, that actually when you use a structured approach, you have 6 times higher chances of getting the desired results and impacts. If you have an excellent change management applied in this project versus if you have ad hoc, no system whatsoever, 6 times difference. So that is something to think about. And what it means, I wanted to get more practical now and provide you one framework, let's call it like that, to or frame to look and analyze change projects through this lens. And oftentimes people perceive change as some, it's a cadence of events, some kind of beginning, kickoff, go live. We do some kind of actions and communication, but we don't see it as a process. In reality, change happens as a process. Think about it. With every person, they need to go through steps. And that is what ADKAR model helps us with so well. Being designed by an engineer, Prosci, some years ago, analyzing changes in hundreds of organizations. Are there some patterns that happen in all kinds of changes? And let's walk through it to see if it makes sense in your project context. So our experience says that any change, the very first building block in it that is vital for everyone to go through it is awareness. Change begins with understanding why. This is the most fundamental question. Why? What's the nature of the change? Why now? What happens if we don't do it? And actually, it's also, our research has shown that the most main reason, most common reason why people resist change is to do with lack of awareness. We didn't manage to provide enough business context. Why we're doing it now. So, or often the challenge can also be the credibility of the sender or the view of the current state. How does it match the story I was told in the organization about that change? So awareness is the first step, first milestone to be achieved. And in a digitalization, or let's say IT systems change context, it is the very question of why we have this new system being implemented. Why now, and why can't we go on with the old version, that works just well enough? And then the second building block coming in is desire. That is a very personal side of change. What's in it for me? Any change involves a personal decision to jump on. And here, providing more and more information, communicating more, just creating more awareness is not an answer. Here you need actually to tie this change to the personal reasons. Again, the what's in it for me. Organizational context needs to be translated to your individual situation. What motivates you? And that motivator can be very different, as on this example you can see. For some people in this IT project, it could be that it simplifies my work. For others, it may be that things become more transparent. For some others, it may just be that I want to be the pioneer and show that I'm the employee who adopts. So whatever the reasons are, you need to really tie this change to the desire. So having built awareness and desire, we also need to work on knowledge. That is about the skills in this change. It has actually two components: the need to know during and need to know after. So basically how to make that change happen. So how can I start using the new system well? And then what is it exactly that's expected from me to do different in the future? And the trick here is very often we see organizations starting from this component, starting from knowledge. We send people to training and we expect them to build desire and start to want to change right away. And that can be a very misleading beginning, actually. Training without desire is quite a waste of money and time, actually. So that's why you see this building blocks kind of build on each other. You need to walk through them. You need to have awareness before desire. You need to have desire before knowledge. And even that is not enough. As we all know, sending users, super users or end users to training how to use the new IT tool is not enough. They may go back to their actual workplace, and that's the real situation where so many questions arise. One training does not necessarily create ability. Ability means really having the skill to put it in practice. There are many factors that can influence that. Having time to practice, having good system of champions, good support system, yeah. Dealing with habit, having time availability, etc. So the key point in here is that there can be quite a big knowledge and ability gap. For some of us, it's small. For some of us, it's really big. And ability is the component in ADKAR model where you start seeing results. So there is no use of awareness, desire, and knowledge on their own. No use. We need to build ability. So that is the key in here. How to do that in IT change, IT systems change. And finally, here is also the answer. We need very good, deliberate, meaningful reinforcement. That is support, mechanism, sustainment, feedback, all of these rewards. That is constant and meaningful, yeah, to reinforce the change. Because in a way, we experience change and as a spring, metal spring, you see on this slide, a picture, that unless there is something that is pulling us forward, if you unleash this strength that pulls us forward, the spring will just go back. There is a lot of inertia in organizations, and the old culture keeps coming back. Very interesting finding from process research also is that it's reinforcement in longer change projects needs to start quite early, right away when the first good examples are already created, and reinforcement may even take half of the time in the change. So often we fail to do it all together because we already run on the next project and we have next deadlines, and you all know that. So what's my point here with ADKAR? What makes this tool really valuable and useful is ADKAR describes us the 5 milestones, the 5 stops or building blocks that every one of us need to go through in a change. And if so often digitalization and IT transformation, it's not something that happens in 1 month. It's maybe years-long project. So how to divide that journey into smaller steps that are meaningful, how to keep the energy, maintain the momentum. That is where ADKAR can be really useful. That's one of the meanings. So it helps you also as a manager, or product owner, project manager, or a partner to your client organization to kind of measure, have we achieved it? Yeah. If you start hearing, for example, that, okay, now I understand why we need this new approach, then that is probably one reason that awareness is created. Yeah, one example to think that. If you start hearing, I have decided to, yes, that's where the desire is happening. I know how to, that's the proof of knowledge. I'm able to, and I will continue to. See, these are the 5 milestones here. Another big value of ADKAR is that actually it shows you where the barrier point is. And by that, I mean where the person, the team, the whole organization struggles currently in this change, which ADKAR component they may need help with. And if we say a change is a process, then a key here is also that every person may go through it at their own pace, as I'm sure you have experienced. There are sponsors who are much faster behind it. They already have all to do a good sponsorship, for example. There are others who are still struggling with awareness, the very first success building block. So it's very frustrating in a change when you're approached with wrong tactics and wrong tools You're struggling with desire, but they still talk about why and why awareness, yeah, the business reasons, nothing personal in there. Or you're struggling with ability, but you're still being just only sent to training and not providing you chances to tie it to your real work and working with the real problems, applying it. So using ADKAR as a frame to talk about change, to measure, gives you a chance to find out where the real problem is and put your resources there. It's really critical for clients and for organizations to do well, because so many organizations today, we have tens of parallel changes. So resources are limited. How do you work with the real stuff at the right moment? Can be really critical to stay on time frame, for example, desired time frame with the project. Here are some suggestions or action steps to take that you could support the client with, and that any organization who struggles with this could do. So for awareness, of course, it's meaningful, two-way, really targeted, group-specific communication. Yeah, it's the senior leaders sharing the why, having access to information, walking the talk, yeah, by the leaders. For desire, you can find these sorts of things. Again, sponsorship being really important in here. Active and early involvement in creating the solution, piloting, etc. And so on. So for reinforcement, for example, celebrating successes right away when they happen. The very first steps, the very first low-hanging fruits can be detrimental and really critical to pick them up and to make sure that journey is expanding and is being heard by others. It's timely feedback, of course. It's measuring the progress. So often we don't see metrics for the people side. So how many people are adopting, where they're struggling, how they're using, all of that is really key in here to reinforce in meaningful ways. So often we find that we need to go back. ADKAR is not always linear process. Yes, they're building on each other, but for example, imagine that you go back after training, you go back to your workplace and you experience that, man, what I was told in the training, it's not exactly like that in real life. There are some problems and challenges. And what happens to desire in this case? So often it's falling. So you need again to reinforce desire and work with those components. So that is something you do throughout the process. Keep the desire in mind here, especially in the longer projects. It's not so linear. Some solutions we provide, how we can support driving adoption through ADKAR. First, on the top left side here, you see we have an app, ADKAR dashboard, we call it, that helps to measure in an organization where the people are in any given change. Have they gone through awareness phase, desire phase? So we get group by group analysis where they are, and that is really driving project management decisions. Second, in the middle here, you see a canvas, ADKAR business canvas. That is a way to plan the whole project. It's supporting resisting factors in each of those elements, to think what can we do to involve people, really, to think through what can we do to move to the next phase. And then we can also plan the whole project timeline through ADKAR lens, group by group. So by what time, which group should be gone through which ADKAR phase. And that really, you see, starts to help us in planning how we move people through the change, not only thinking about the solution side. So ADKAR can be meaningful also for a reason that it's providing a context. It's a nice umbrella to many different models in use in organizations, be it agile, for example. You can just as well use ADKAR. So on the project level, for example, you create awareness and desire kind of in the beginning phase, yeah? And then in each of the iterations, you keep on building knowledge and ability. as you test and try and build the solution, you build on the knowledge and ability of the people involved, and then you reinforce at the end. So it's kind of like a platform for many different systems in organizations already, be it Lean, Six Sigma, Agile, Waterfall, however, what's the approach to the change? It can be useful. I wanted to provide you a case study, how we have worked with ADKAR in IT context especially. So this comes from one large public sector organization, in this case in Estonia, where we helped them. The main goal was to increase efficiency and transparency, also engagement in this case specifically in legislation processes in that organization. That was organization-wide IT systems change. So what we did basically, we delivered them workshops, helped them design based on ADKAR and Prosci best practice to design this journey and the change plans and to define the roles, because we discovered they had no person in charge of managing the change process. There was a project manager, but she was a technical project manager. So we provided them the ADKAR framework to really analyze the whole process. And I'll show you a few outcomes of that. So we stepped in as a consultancy, kind of end in the journey. It was a several year project, and believe it or not, they had spent the whole time on project management, on the technical solution side. That's on the left on this slide. So half a year before go live, we were in a situation where they had initiated the project, they had a design being, the solution already being piloted and all such. These are the steps on the left side. But they had not done any of those things on the right side here, the change management side. So we helped them to conduct readiness assessment, analyze how it will impact different groups, to see, what is the organizational context, how people are influenced. So we asked them questions: who are the sponsors? Who will be walking the talk? Who are supporting? And they had no clearly defined sponsorship behind it. So we built communication plan. We supported managers in thinking through how they will support and reinforce this change, for example, etc., etc. So these are some of the. So at the end, ultimately, we had a cohesive implementation plan that was not just about technical implementation, but just as well about the people side, how we tie those activities together. A few examples here. We created a project health assessment, found out that change management was absent. We analyzed risk level, so how complicated the project is, how many people it influences, on how many levels, what is the current organizational readiness. So it turned out to be a high-risk project at the time of many other changes happening simultaneously. So that started to determine the approach we took. We needed resources, we needed planned approach. So we thought through also how ready the sponsors are. We analyzed the whole coalition there. And we thought about how the groups are impacted. Which groups should we start to involve first, for example, There is a tool for that. As well as creating the plans, you see, just as a result of some dialogue in project team, how we will communicate, how we will sponsor this project, how can we deal with resistance, how we overcome it. Just building on ADKAR. And my final point in here is why doing it? Why investing resources? Why telling your clients it's really, really important? Is that if you imagine a project life cycle from initiation to deployment, or however you call it, from kickoff to go live, these are the major events. Then what should happen with the people? Knowing that change is a process, individual journey. Where should they be for the go live moment in terms of ADKAR? Should they have awareness? Should they have desire? Should they have knowledge so that the go live goes well? Should they have ability? That is really the key. So our point here is in a successful project that is timely, that brings the business benefits you have desired. That's what should happen. Before go live, we have already built awareness, desire, knowledge, and at least some ability that we reinforce. And that is why we need change process. Unfortunately, in reality, so often we have seen in IT project different changes. It's all squeezed during the go live moment. All of the ADKAR questions start to happen there at go live. We get the resistance, we get problems. That's where we finally start asking, should we have created more awareness? Should we have stopped for a moment to think why we do it? What's in it for people? So that is why thinking adoption needs planning. And finally, our largest enterprise involvement globally for Prosci is working with Microsoft. And I just provide this example to show you that you can be really deliberate and results driven with this method, with ADKAR and all the supporting tools. And Microsoft over the years has achieved 450% increase in adoption among its customers, of their tools and solutions, through providing the framework to its partners, to its end users, etc. Your next step could be, if you got excited about this approach, you would like to learn more and see how you could apply it in your project. Prosci has created a globally renowned 3-day certification program on change management that gives you all of this toolbox and a chance to work through your own change project, applying it right away in spot, as well as you get the certification.